Hello, everybody. I'm Cindy Lora-Renard, and I'm here today to talk about my new book that was just published last July. And here it is. It's called A Course in Health and Well-Being.
All right. Hello, Europe. Hello, world. I'm Gary Renard, and I'm going to speak for a few minutes today, but I'm going to let Cindy go first because we're very excited about your new book, which I wrote the foreword for. And it's arguably the best foreword ever written for any book. So I'm excited about that too. But it's mostly the book that's important. And it was Cindy's first book. And as you know, I've done 4. And we're all published by the same great publisher. So take it away, Cindy.
Thank you, Gary. By the way, I'd like to mention we're sitting here on that first couch that Artin and Persa first appeared to Gary on back in 1992. So this is what we call A&P's couch. So this is the first time Gary and I are really sitting on this together doing a interview. So anyway, I'd like to talk a little bit about my book. And what inspired this book was I get a lot of questions from people in our workshops about the body and how one can look at pain and illness, how A Course in Miracles would interpret it. So from a non-dualistic perspective, how can we perceive pain? How can we look at the body from a place of cause and not effect? So my book addresses that. So it discusses the themes of health and well-being from a non-dualistic perspective. And mind is where all cause originates. So it's all about how we can change our minds and look at our bodies and look at ourselves from the Holy Spirit's perspective instead of the ego. So I go in depth on giving practical exercises and application into how one can practice A Course in Miracles with whatever comes up that disturbs your peace in everyday life, including what's going on with the body. And some of the chapters are, what is the purpose of the body? In other words, there are 2 purposes for the body, and only one of them is true. When we use the body for the Holy Spirit's purpose, we're using it for what it was meant to be used for, rather than the ego's purpose, which is always to separate oneself and make the body and the world real. And also I address forgiveness and what is true forgiveness and how can that be applied in your everyday life to whatever also that comes up that disturbs your peace. So I go in depth of what true forgiveness is, what it means according to A Course in Miracles, and I discuss the difference between true forgiveness and forgiveness to destroy. And I go into the power of decision, which is in the mind, that there are always 2 choices that we have, no matter what is going on in our daily lives, or with ourselves or with the world. We can either perceive the world through the ego, which is based on separation and making the world and our bodies real, or we can perceive ourselves and the world through the Holy Spirit's purpose, which is a completely different way of looking at ourselves and the world. It's a more empowering way. You know, it's a way that helps you, again, to not be the victim of the world that you see or a victim of your circumstances. The Course says the script is written, so we don't really have to worry about that. You know, we can just let the script play out. But the purpose is that we can use the scripts and what's going on in our everyday lives for a different purpose. So I'd like to give you some of my chapter titles in the book. And here's the book again, A Course in Health and Well-Being. And some of the chapter titles are, the first chapter is really, what is health? And the Course describes health as inner peace. Notice that it doesn't really have anything to do with the body, because the Course isn't about behavior, it's not about the body. So I discuss what true health really is and how we can achieve true health by practicing in our everyday lives on a daily basis, being consistent and vigilant only for God and His kingdom. Chapter 3, the purpose of the body. Chapter 4, the power of choice, choosing between separation and wholeness. Chapter 5, empowering ways to deal with pain. Chapter 6, practical steps to experience mental health, because all health is a mental process, not a physical one. This is why we can change our minds about it, whatever is going on. We can decide to see it with our right minds instead of with the ego mind. And lastly, change your mind, wake up to your life. And waking up to your real life begins with recognizing and choosing the miracle, remembering that you're dreaming. You're dreaming a dream of separation, a dream of pain. But it's only a dream, and dreams aren't real. And part of making the shift is just that recognition, the remembering that we're dreaming. So with that, I hope you all get a chance to pick up a copy of my book. I wrote it with love, and I hope that it will be received with love. And I hope you enjoy it. And I'll turn it over now to Gary. And I want to thank you all. And then if you do read it, I hope you truly enjoy it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. Yeah. Speaking of dreaming, and I'm glad that Cindy brought up dreaming, because A Course in Miracles says that awareness of dreaming is a function of the miracle worker. And of course, the miracle worker is anybody who practices forgiveness. But you become more aware that you're dreaming. So we're aware that we're dreaming this right now. And it's kind of like you're standing outside of it. Your mind is outside of it, viewing it, as the Course says, reviewing mentally that which has already gone by. So it's very much like watching a movie. And I remember, speaking of dreaming, about 10.5 years ago, I made my first trip here. We're in Los Angeles. And I went into this record store, and I saw this woman, and I just thought that she was wonderful. And there was something about her that was familiar, and I thought, I know that person from some other place and time. And I didn't have the nerve to talk to her, but I would never forget her. It's like her face was imprinted in my mind. And then 2 years later, I was signing books, and she came up to me, and we got to know each other. And today, 10.5 years later, that woman who was Cindy and myself, we live here together right around the corner from the place where I first saw her. And if you told me back in those days that I was going to be living in Hollywood, you know, around the corner from where I just saw this beautiful woman, I wouldn't have believed you. And it just shows you that the dream can go in any direction. The important thing is that it's a happy dream, because if you're living a happy dream, then it doesn't matter what happens, because your happiness and your peace of mind is not dependent on what takes place in the dream. It's not dependent on circumstances. All that's important is that you be peaceful, regardless of what happens in the dream. And, I remember when Cindy would first start coming to my workshops, she would sit in the back and not say anything. And then she would do a song. And then maybe a year later, she would do 2 songs. Then a couple of years later, she'd speak and introduce herself. And she talked for like 5 minutes. Then a couple of years later, she was talking for half an hour. And now I can't shut her up. It's like she speaks just as long as I do. And it's good, because she knows what she's talking about. You know, she's a real spiritual counselor. She's done hundreds and hundreds of counseling sessions with people. And I hear, you know, how sincere she is when I hear her talking on the phone to these people. And she's a graduate of the, you know, the University of Santa Monica. She has a master's degree in spiritual psychology. I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology from Trump University. So, you know, that's pretty good. And Cindy really knows what she's talking about. And I enjoy getting the teachings from her, because it gives me a fresh perspective on what we're talking about, what we're teaching. And I'm really excited about her book. I'm also really excited about my 4th book, which is called The Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other. And that book is quite a trip, you know, because I didn't even know if there was going to be a 4th book. And then it turned out, you know, I asked Art and Persia a question in my mind. And the question was, how did Jesus get to be Jesus? You know, what was he like in the incarnations before that? What was Buddha like? And when it came to the answer, I got a lot more than I bargained for, because the answer to that question turned out to be an entire book. So I'm excited about that too. And I'm sure we'll be back in Spain soon. And
Formentera.
Yeah, Formentera.
We'll be coming to Formentera, Spain, and both our books will be available this coming April of this year. And April 22nd, 23rd, that weekend. And we'll also be coming back to Barcelona, Spain next year in March. So we look forward to seeing all of you who can make it.
Yeah, we'll also be in Amsterdam this June, if you'd like to come
That's
over.
right.
So it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's also going to be very much an in-depth teaching of undoing the ego. So we hope you enjoy the books, and it's great to have you as our friends, and have a good one.
Thank you, everybody. God bless you.
Yes.